What's up, Malcolm? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better than AWS.
Right. For the audience, we're recording this the day that US East 1 had an outage. Riverside is acting up, but we'll see what we can do here. So anyway, good to see you again. How have you been?
I've been well, man. I've been busy traveling, but I hate to complain because it's like first world problems, right? I get to go to some of the most amazing cities on the planet on somebody else's dime. So I don't like to complain about travel because I actually quite enjoy it. And I enjoy like, hanging out with data people and talking with data leaders and talking about data. I love it. But it is a bit of a grind as well. So we're kind of
For
like
sure.
in our the drill. We're in our conference season and it's October, early November. It just is what it is. So I've been busy. I've been busy.
Where have you been traveling to?
Oh gosh, all across the U.S., cities in the U.S., Europe, London a few times. I got to go to Copenhagen for the first time, which was
Sick.
like awesome. I'd never been to Copenhagen. To me, Copenhagen was like the what I thought Amsterdam would be,
Okay.
but isn't, right. Not knocking on Amsterdam. It's got its pluses, but Copenhagen is just kind of more chill and cleaner and less icky, and it's got a lot of the charms and the canals and the people on bikes, and had coffee with the amazing Olsen Bagno, which was
Yeah.
great, which is fun.
Good dude.
Got to go to Stuttgart, Germany,
Oh,
which they call it the Detroit of Germany. It's where cars are made.
yeah.
I mean, those are just like two of the new places that I've been, which is cool. So
Super
yeah,
cool.
it's been fun.
Nice. Well, it's good we could connect for a podcast. Yeah. So I think one thing that you recently accomplished, you made a book,
Yes, I did.
which is pretty cool. Congrats on that. Is this your first or
Thank
second
you.
book?
It's my first. It's so odd though, Joe. Like so many people think it's like the second or third.
Yeah, you seem like a guy who's written books.
Apparently, many people have said, well, it's your second or your third, or made reference to that, and I have not. It's my first.
Okay. Awesome. What possessed you to want to write a book?
That's a good question. The short answer, and probably the most honest one, is I had a lot of stuff to say and I needed to get it off my chest. And that's just like the most honest answer. Honest answer number two is I wanted to, like, there's like some weird legacy. I don't have any kids and I wanted to leave something behind that outlived me. And maybe that's kind of a little egocentric, probably is, but there's some truth to that. And honest answer number three is that I challenged myself to do it. And once I challenge myself to do something, it's going to happen by hook or by crook. It's just going to happen.
It's going to happen.
That's just kind of how I am. But the biggest reason is I learned a ton when I was an analyst at noted analyst firm that makes hype cycles and quadrants of magic. I learned a ton. And in that experience, I spoke to over 1,500 CDOs and VPs of data and analytics, right? Like every day. The whole business model there is you spend your entire day talking to data leaders. It was 5 times a day, every day for 3 years, totaled up to 1,500 conversations, probably closer to 2,000 people, which is like just kind of a crazy number to just even throw out there. Like, yeah, I talked to 2,000 data leaders, but that's probably pretty close to true. It's definitely north of 1,500. And I learned a ton, and I wanted to share that. And I just needed to.
Yeah.
So I kind of set out as like, all right, if nobody buys this, I don't. It's okay because this is like a passion thing for me.
What's the book about?
It's mostly about what I call mindset. What I think, and I didn't come up with mindset. I mean, this is a well-known phrase and a well-known term. But when I was, an analyst at noted analyst firm, there were a number of things that CDOs who were struggling the most had in common. And when you do these inquiries and you have these conversations day after day after day, there's a lot of failure modes that just become abundantly obvious. They became abundantly obvious to me, at the very least, when I was having these conversations. So, what do I mean by failure mode? To me, when I looked at it and I spent some time thinking, I spent a good year and a half post analyst firm just thinking about some of these problems and thinking about what I heard and trying to digest what I heard through a slightly different lens. And what I saw was some commonalities. And those commonalities were all related to what I would call a limiting mindset.
Mm.
Ideas like, well, we've tried that before and it doesn't work. You can drag a horse to water. You can't make them drink. The business just doesn't care about data quality. The business isn't data driven. Them. What I heard over and over and over was a lot of blame and a lot of finger pointing and a lot of reasons related to this idea of a limiting mindset. It's not me, it's them. We can only do so much. We're the ones pushing the boulder up the hill, and it's them that are rolling the boulder back down over us over and over and over again. And honestly, it sounded like a lot of blame, right? And it sounded like a lot of lack of accountability. It sounded like a lack of responsibility. And I'm not trying to be like, I don't want to be finger pointing myself. It's just that especially because I know people are trying really hard, and I know that people really care. And I know that people are extremely well intentioned. And I know the job is hard because I've done the job. But what I saw was abundantly obvious to me. And I wanted to scream it from the mountaintops. So instead of a very customer driven, very growth centered mindset, innovation, willingness to take risk, willingness to collaborate, willingness to embrace more probabilistic ways of thinking, instead of that, what I saw was a lot of finger pointing, a lot of them. And I just needed to tell that story.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a lot of data leaders to talk to, first of all. 2000, that's almost a small town. And then, the issue of mindset, the topic of that's really interesting. Are you able to bucket data leaders into certain types of archetypes? Uh, and if so, what would those be?
I mean, well, the common ones are more technical versus more business, right? I mean, that's kind of like the easiest lens to apply to data leaders if you want to put them into archetypes. There's the kind of, they grew up in the technology, IT/data world, and then there are the folks that came from the business side. And I've got to be brutally honest here, Joe, and say that this issue of a limiting mindset and of finger pointing, it's not me, it's them, was far more prevalent with technology-centric data leaders. It just was, for all sorts of different reasons, I think, right? And my book doesn't necessarily go into the reasons of like how are these mindsets necessarily created per se. I talk more about how often I saw them and how they're actually getting reinforced. So it's not that we exist in this world where, you know, these are kind of anomalies and they're one off and we can say, oh, okay, well, that's a limiting mindset. That's an inability to, be accountable. It's not a one off. And it's not a one off because those mindsets are reinforced in almost everything we do.
Yeah.
Almost everything we do. They're reinforced through the analyst community. They're reinforced through the thought leadership community that you and I are a part of. They're reinforced at conferences. I'll give you an example. Every year, my old employer, Gartner, does a CDO survey. And it's like the top 10 reasons for top 10 roadblocks to CDO success. Like, what are the things that are holding you back, CDOs? And every one of them, save one or two, every single one of them is what a social psychologist would call an external locus of control, meaning it's not me, it's them, meaning it is something outside of me. It is external to me. The classics are the business doesn't have a data-driven culture. The business is data illiterate, lack of executive funding and support, lack of support of data governance function. I mean, I could go on, but all with the exception of recruitment and training and lack of access to skilled resources, almost all, save one or two, year after year after year, of the biggest roadblocks are external to the CDO organization. In other words, these CDOs are not saying, well, it's me. It's my lack of leadership. It's my inability to quantify business benefits of data, my inability to retain and recruit a good team, my leadership skills, none of that. It's all external. And this tends to be a little bit more acute from technical folks for whatever reason. The business folks tend to be a little more innovative, a little more willing to take risks, a little less deterministic when it comes to rules. They seem to be a little bit more able to understand that things like data quality are not binary, right? They exist on a spectrum. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be finger pointing myself because that would be ultimately ironic. And that's not my goal because I do know that people are well intentioned. But what I saw is that there are all these reinforcement mechanisms constantly, right? So Gartner will say, well, hey, a lack of a data-driven culture, that's a big roadblock to CDOs. CDOs will go, we don't have a data-driven culture. I can't do anything, right? Gartner will say, hey, there's no data-driven culture. What I saw when I was an analyst, it was a tell. If a CDO said we don't have a data-driven culture, it was a tell. And what the tell is that in reality, what they were telling me is the business isn't doing what I want them to do. They're not showing up to stewardship, the governance committee meetings. They're not doing data stewardship. They're not inputting data correctly in our CRM. They're not doing all the things that I want them to do. Ergo, that's proof that we don't have a data-driven culture.
Right. And not proof that you might be shitty at selling the idea of data.
Or maybe that people are putting dumb things into a CRM because they're incentivized to do that. Maybe they have to do that because their workflows are completely broken. Maybe they have to do that in order to get paid, right? I see this 1,000 times. When I was doing the job, it's like, why is there a customer name -A? Why customer name -A? This is crap data quality. What's going on? And when you look at it, you're like, well, A is the first initial of the salesperson, and that's the only way that they can get paid because there's no integration between the CRM and our payments system. Something like that, right? Like, it's not lack of a data-driven culture. It's not people don't care about data quality. It's like, hey, I get paid when I put in the letter A.
Yeah, it's like Charlie Munger always said, my favorite quote of all time is, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. And so it sounds like, it's interesting, Malcolm. When I went to a CDO summit one time in Boston, and I gotta say, and I've told this to other people, but I felt like I was at an AA meeting or some sort of like group therapy session. It was very much, and I think what you're hitting on is interesting because I saw the same kind of behavior where it's very much this, we only have so much capital, we have to align with the business, and nobody wants to give up the keys of the kingdom, nobody wants to share the data, right? It felt like it was very much let's bitch about all the external forces that are impacting us, not so much reflecting on the bringing yourself to the job or whatever. I thought that was interesting because at the end of the day, I mean, people have asked me why I don't become a CDO. And I was like, there's no way in hell I would ever do that job for a lot of reasons. It just, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. It's like the tenure of a CDO, I think, flies might have a longer lifespan. It seems like it's a thankless job. And it's a tough one. But as you say, some of these, it is an interesting insight. I never really thought about, sort of the, this versus pointing the other direction.
I've been to all those conferences. I won't name the one you were at. I'm pretty sure I know which one because there's a fairly famous one in Boston every year. But I'll be there tomorrow at another CDO conference. So not the same one that we're talking about, but that what you're describing is very real and happens all the time. And it's not just at conferences. It's within the consultant community, right? You go hire a consultant. What the consultant is going to tell you, yep, you're exactly right. We can help you. And let me do that. Let me do that maturity assessment. And what are we going to find? Lo and behold, oh, shocker, shocker, you're about a 2 to a 2.5 out of 5 on a maturity assessment. And here's all the things that you're weak at. I can already tell you the things you're going to be weak at. The consultants are going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. The consultants want to extend the life of an SOW, right? And they're going to focus on all the areas where you suck, right? They're not going to focus on the area. They're not going to double and triple and quadruple down on the areas where you're already good because that's not what they're hiring you for. They're going to double down and they're going to focus on, hey, look at all the areas you suck. Proof positive. This is proof positive that, okay, you know what, we've got these challenges. The business doesn't care about data. We don't have a data-driven culture. Here are all the things that I need to do, the preceding actions based on what the consultant told me using their trademark method of all the things that I need to do in order to deliver value to the business. When in reality, I can probably deliver value to the business right now, independent of that time-wasting, money-sucking maturity assessment that may help kind of understand maybe some of the gaps in the organization from a skills and a resource perspective. But chances are you already know what the top 3 gripes are of your customers. You probably already know what the top 3 things are that you could be focused on to deliver value in the short term. But instead, you're being told by this consultant that it's a best practice to do a maturity assessment. It's a best practice to do a gap assessment. It's a best practice to implement a data literacy program. All these other things that will make them a ton of money, but aren't going to solve your problems in the short term. So that's like kind of reinforcement mechanism number 1. Then you call the analyst and say, hey, analyst, I'm having a hard time. My company isn't data driven. What do you recommend? Oh, well, you should embark on a program to help your data, training, data literacy, get them involved in understanding what they need to do better about data, make them see the value in data. When the correct answer is deliver something of value. When you deliver something of value, the culture will follow you. What I learned in my book, and this is not just me, this is actual established quant research in the field of psychology. Culture is an outcome, is a deliverable from business outcomes. If you deliver the outcome, culture will follow. Culture is not a dependency to deliver outcomes. It is something that happens when you deliver outcomes. The culture will follow you. The culture will come along, right? But to say, oh, I need to go change the culture before I can deliver any value, analysts love it. Consultants love it because they are the SOWs that last forever, because Microsoft, for example, is on a 10-year culture pivot. 10 years. 10 years. And they're not even done. So the idea that you have to go fix your culture before you can deliver any value, I mean, that's so these mechanisms exist, and they keep reinforcing a lot of these same ideas, a lot of these, what I call a limiting mindset in the book. And what my book is all about is like, throw that stuff out and focus on stuff that delivers value right now.
Malcolm, what is value?
Such a good question. I have conversations to this day at these conferences that I go to, sitting around lunch tables and, brown bags and, workshops. And I still hear data leaders tell me that it's impossible to measure the value of data. Right. And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, wait a minute. We're in the modeling business. We're in the measurement business. I don't mean like blue steel modeling business. I mean, like we're literally in the modeling and measuring business. This is what we do. And you're telling me you can't measure the value of data, but you're the chief measuring person in the company. So first of all, it's not true, right? That value, I mean, technically there is, cost, benefit, that's ROI. Value could be a monetary figure. It could be avoiding risk, right? It could be future value. But value are the things that our businesses care about. KPIs, the things that our executives that we support are measured on. More revenue, less cost, less risk. And you can articulate value in multiple different ways, and you can do it through multiple models, but you most certainly can measure it. Even if measuring value exists on a spectrum. There's one end of the spectrum is like fully causal, where you do a baseline, you do A/B tests, and where that's hard to do, like where you actually drill down to a causal driver of value, better data quality, better master data management, better data governance, whatever those things are. But you can do it. It's hard. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is building some sort of model based on a guess. But here's a hard fact. Most of our business functions are operating that way. Can marketing tell you that $1 spent in a marketing program is $1 in the bank? Nope. Can HR tell you that $1 spent on an employee retention program is going to equal one more year of that employee? Nope. It's a model. They're guessing, right? They're in marketing, they call it attribution. We think this investment is going to drive this result. Everybody generally agrees, and there is some correlation to show that it's real. Correlation is not causality, but it's still greater than zero. We can measure this stuff. We can approximate, we can model, we can come up with ways to measure value. And when we say that we can't, we totally disempower ourselves. Can you imagine? You're a CEO and you hire some hotshot CDO to say, hey, CDO, I'm going to invest in Databricks. I'm going to invest in all this tech that you want me to. I'll invest in all of this stuff. What's my ROI going to be? Do you want to be the CDO that says, hey, boss, I don't know. We do it all the time, though, right? And here's the greater irony, Joe. We want everybody else to be data-driven. You need to be data-driven. You need to be data-driven. Right. You need to be data-driven. And when you don't show up to governance committee meetings, that's proof that you're not data-driven. But when it comes to prioritization, when it comes to justifying our investments in our entire department, we're like,
right,
not me, you. That's kind of like that's the whole thing. It's like, and if we can't measure, or if we don't want to measure, or we refuse to measure our own value, I think that's an integrity problem. Because we're asking everybody else to be data-driven, but we're not asking ourselves to be data-driven.
Very fair point.
Sorry, I get on rants, but
please rant away. This is the home of ranting. But it's very true. I always find it ironic because we are supposed to be the ones being data-driven. We work in data, and yeah, time and time again, it's one of those things where ROI is questionable. And I've gotten really tired of it too, because people are like, well, we got to deliver the business value. I'm like, yeah, no shit. That's kind of how that works. So yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting way of framing I hadn't really thought of, where it is very much where, well, you all have to be data driven, and we can sit here and just make shit up all day, and that's how that'll be. So
Well, and what the one of the many problems is that I think now most everybody out there has kind of got value fatigue, right? Because to your point, you go and look on LinkedIn, it's like deliver the
totally
value, deliver the value, deliver the value. It's almost kind of like, this consultant speak that doesn't mean anything and has lost any of its, ironically, value because we keep saying it so much over and over and over again. But the reason why we keep saying it is because nobody's quantifying it.
that's just it.
So,
And I always say too, if you have to shout about how much you need to add value, there's probably an inverse correlation between that and the amount of value you're adding. Oh, the people I know who add value, they don't talk about it. They're just out there delivering shit.
well, like, sorry, like lowering the failure rate of your data pipeline from, 2% to 1% is not business value. It's just not improving data quality, right? This is what I would hear often when I was an analyst, and I'd say, well, how are you measuring your success? Well, we're measuring our uptime, right? We're measuring data quality. And don't get me wrong, those things are important. Those things are good, right? It's good to know, how our success rate on any of our ETL jobs. I get it. That's important. We need to do that, but it's not business value. Nobody in the
Right.
business cares. Nobody in the business cares about your successful pipelines because, Frank, you know it. Like, it's nobody's calling you up and say, "Hey, Joe, hey, pipeline ran last night, killing it. Thank you." Right? And I got my bonus because your pipeline ran.
Does your janitor call you up at your office and say, I mean, I cleaned the toilet last night, Malcolm, just so you know? Like that's just table stakes, right?
Well, right. So the whole message is that you need to tie that improved data quality to actual business benefits. And,
Yeah.
and it's honestly not that hard, because if you strip it down to like just bare bones object level, right? It's the customer object, it's the supplier object, it's the asset, it's employee, it's whatever. These are part of either a numerator or a denominator in some KPI on somebody's performance report, on somebody's QBR that matter, right? Like number of customers added. If we could just improve the data quality, yes, I mean it improves the number, and I'm going to care about that as the chief revenue officer, right? Like that the number looks better because the data quality is more reliable, it's more accurate, whatever it is. That's a very basic way to say, okay, I improve this metric, therefore somebody gets paid more. Bingo, let me focus there. And trust me,
Right.
if you go talk to anybody in the business and say, hey, how are you measured? What are the measurements you care about the most? Name the top three. You reverse engineer from there, you will be able to find a way to improve those metrics. I guarantee it.
I like that. And is that how you suggest? So say I'm a CDO. I decided to take the job actually, and now I'm a CDO. I'm utterly clueless about where to start. Do you think that what you just suggested, is that what you'd recommend as a starting
Absolutely.
point? Okay.
The first conversation I would have with anybody is all the VPs on the business side, and I would ask, how do you get measured? Like, how do you get measured? What do you care about the most? Give me your top three metrics. How do you feel about the reliability, accuracy of those metrics? Are they good? Are they bad? If I could improve them, what would you do for me? Right? If I can improve them, and if I can show, okay, you're a chief revenue officer and you are measured on cross sell or upsell, right? Selling product, you're selling product A, but you're not selling product B. If I can show you opportunities for cross sell that you can't see today because maybe we don't have a 360-degree view of our customers or our products, if I can show you those things through better analytics, what's it worth to you? Well, that would be worth millions. Done. That's where I would focus. I wouldn't focus on a framework. I wouldn't focus on a maturity assessment. I wouldn't focus on hiring a horde of consultants to do some sort of readiness assessment. I wouldn't do that. I would sit down with VPs with reasonably big titles, ask them how they're measured, and figure out ways to improve it.
Makes sense.
Simple, right? And that's in lieu of actually, while you're doing that, you're understanding the business. You're understanding the business processes. You're starting to figure out how the business actually works, right? Where you can start focusing on some of the longer term, more strategic, bigger picture stuff, right? So all CDOs need to be, I don't know what Gartner would call kind of bimodal, right? You need to be short term, short term, short term. Meanwhile, right, when you go back to the engine room, you need to be working on some of those bigger picture things. But if you start on the bigger picture things, if you start on the big I'm going to implement a governance program. I'm going to implement a data quality. If you start on that big stuff, right, and that's all you're focused on, and it takes 12 months to deliver anything, you're done.
Yeah, that's what I see too. I'm sure you've seen more of these instances. Um, yeah, like the CDO comes in, with their own framework that's probably failed everywhere they've been, and yeah, it's like because I think the consensus is, I'd love your take on this. Like, you maybe have at most 6 months to get the capital, to get the relationships, in order to pave the way for you to get the wins. And if you haven't done it by then, your CEO is already probably looking for your replacement at the end of
Great.
that period.
You get a little more runway if you're in a compliance and risk driven field. If
Mm,
you're working for a bank or an insurance company where the kind of the data management is inherently more about managing risk, right?
right,
But that's not where most CDOs are being hired these days. Most CDOs are being hired as change agents. As,
right,
hey, we need to embrace AI. We need to. 4 years ago, it was digitally transform. Most of the time, new CDOs are being brought in. Government is an exception on this, by the way. But most of the time, CDOs are being brought in order to work differently, to re engineer processes, to do stuff differently using data, not, hey, keep the bank robbers at bay.
right,
Valuable, necessary. So at a bank, you're going to get a little bit more runway, and you're going to be inherently a little bit more conservative, and that's okay. And you're going to be a little more governance and rule driven, and that's okay. But yeah, I think I totally agree with your assessment. If you are 12 months in and haven't really kind of materially moved the needle, you're done. But what I see is that a lot of chief data officers are in those situations, and 18 months are up, and the reaper comes and they need to go and find a new job. And when they're recruiting for that next new job, their next CEO will say, "What happened? What's going on? Why were you only 18 months at Acme Incorporated?" Well, Acme Incorporated, just not data driven, right? I wanted to do
yeah,
some things. I wanted to implement some big stuff, but I wasn't given the runway. I wasn't given the funding. I wasn't given the support. It was everybody was data illiterate. They didn't see the value in data, right? And well, I get that because that's all I ever hear. And when I look at my Gartner reports, that's what I see as the number 1, 2, 3, and 6 roadblocks. And if that's what you're experiencing, that fully explains why you're only there 18 months.
right. Yeah, and I've heard this from some chief data officers too. That they're brought in to be the transformation agent, and that's why they're not in their job more than usually a year and a half. And I thought it was an interesting comment. But then you see that they serially just top from job to job to job, and then you're kind of like, well, is it? I think the interesting thing about all this is you're the most consistent variable in this equation. But I don't know. What do I know? I'm not a CDO, right? Of
Well, and I'm sure there's some, right? These roadblocks are real, right?
course they
And
are.
and they're a pain, and I've dealt with every single one of them. But why I wrote the book is that I wanted to highlight this issue that what, hey, maybe right, this is you, and maybe there are things that you can do and things that you can own, because I don't want to be in a job where I'm powerless to everybody else. Like I don't want that job, right?
Sounds
Where
awesome, Malcolm. I'm
no,
kidding.
no, it sucks, right? And I don't want to be in the job where I'm powerless to everybody else. I want to be in the job where I am the one steering the ship, and I am responsible for if the ship makes it to its destination or not. And there are things that we can do. The hurdles are many. This job is hard, man. It is hard. I get it, right? Legacy tech, legacy mindsets, insufficient staffing, insufficient investment, all these things. I know these things are real, but I also know that conversations that I've had day in and day out with CDOs, there are these little things all over the place that we could be
Mm,
doing better. Yeah, okay. Yeah, AI, sure, we can talk about AI, but still the reports are broken, right? Like
yeah.
just make the reports work, right?
What was the reception to your book when CDOs have read it? What have they said?
When people read it, they love it.
Okay.
When people read it, they love it. Now, I think that you have to be open to a certain degree. You have to be open to a level of criticism that some people may not be open to, right? And that's okay, but you know, revolutions are built on reasonably small minorities of people. All I'm looking for is like 10%, right? If I could get 10% of CDOs out there saying, wow, this is a message of empowerment. This is a message of innovation. This is a message of taking back control over our careers. And here are two or three things that Malcolm that are suggesting and that seems to be completely reasonable and that I've done. You can turn that cruise ship around. You don't need 100%. You just need 10% of the people who are adamant and who are rabid about making change. And so when people read it, they've loved it. The responses have been generally pretty good, actually better than I thought they were going to be. I thought a lot of people would respond negatively because I'm calling some babies kind of ugly. I'm throwing darts at some fairly sacred cows, arguably much bigger than darts and much sharper. And I expected the response to be fairly negative in some of those areas. But generally, it's been, oh, wow, I never thought about things that way. I never thought about it that way. It's like when one of my sacred cows, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like I think that phrase is completely and totally useless, and it's beyond useless. I consider it toxic. And why? Because it disempowers us. It is the ultimate message of disempowerment, right? Like it's not me, it's them. It's they threw that crap over the fence, and now here I am doing the yeoman's work to make lemonade out of this giant lemon pile. And all they do is keep throwing more and more lemons at me. They don't understand how hard my job is. They don't get how hard I have to work. And they don't care about data. They don't care about data quality. Garbage in, garbage out. And it may be factually true to a certain degree. I would argue it is not. But it's a drastic reduction of something that is far more nuanced, right? Data quality exists on a spectrum. It's not deterministic. It's not either or. What's good quality to marketing may suck to finance and vice versa, right? Data quality is context driven. It is entirely dependent on what you're going to do with the data, right? And just assessing the data quality, say, oh, it's garbage. I think that is a message of disempowerment and one we need to get rid of. But that's one example of, a sacred cow that I've gone after. And there are multiple that I go after in the book.
Now, on the flip side too, I mean, I've seen companies where it probably is impossible to do anything with data, I would say. Like maybe the culture is that backwards, that rigid, whatever, where, you may not have an impact. What would you say to somebody in that situation where the company culture overall is just dysfunctional as hell? You're probably not going to get the wins that you want no matter what you do, right? What would you say to that person?
I would say to check again.
Okay.
Because I liken what you just said to when I hear people say the business doesn't know what it wants.
Okay.
Like I've led a data team, and I used to have my analysts come back and say, hey, what's going on with ABC? Well, they don't know what they want. So you're not doing anything. No, I'm not doing anything because they don't know what they want. They can't tell me what they want. Right. And my answer to that would be BS. They know exactly what they want and they need our help to get it. They're just not articulating it in a way that makes any sense to you. They're probably expressing their needs in a very business centric way. And they're probably expressing them actually in solutions and not problems, which is difficult in and of itself. But when you say, well, this business is too far gone, they will never be data driven. They will never embrace data. My answer to that generally is going to be baloney, because I've never met a marketing person that didn't want more data. I've never met a marketing person that didn't want 100% visibility on everything they do. I've never met one. I've never met a finance person that doesn't want more visibility on their spends. I've never met somebody in procurement that didn't want deeper insights into their suppliers, into their supply chain, or the cost of their supply chain. I've never met, in my conversations, I've never met people that don't want what we do. I just haven't. What I have seen is that often when we struggle to deliver things of value, often when we struggle to understand what our customers want, often when we see our customers doing things that on the surface appear to be contrary to a data-driven mission, when we see all of those things, those tend to be proof for many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, that they don't care about data. What we need to do instead is to see around that, to see through that, and to be able to say, okay, they really do need our services. They really do need our help. And simply, maybe because a CEO looked at something, looked at a report and didn't use the report, and they used their intuition. Well, that okay, it happens. right? And it's going to continue to happen. Maybe that's a trust issue. Maybe the data you're putting in front of them is not reliable, or there's questions of it. Maybe you don't have an analyst working with that consumer to help them understand the data, and on and on and on. So I don't know, Joe. I have a hard time thinking that any company would be too far gone.
Yeah.
Just because in my lived experiences is that every time I ever work with a marketer, they want more data, more supply
It's a
chain,
very data-driven
more
thing.
finance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
But I've heard it. I heard it when I was an analyst. It's like people would call me for career advice. They'd say, I think it's too far gone. I think I need to be looking for others because I'm like, here's all the things that I see. And I've just rattled off like
Yeah.
15 of them, right? People showing up to governance committee meetings. Their teams are putting dumb stuff into Salesforce or whatever, and they're too far gone. And I tend to be fairly kind of stubborn and loyal to a point. So maybe that's a problem with me, but I don't think there's any organization that's too far gone when it comes to data.
Yeah. I think I've seen a couple where but that's, and even then, like it was one company I used to work at, and I felt like that was, um, it's actually my first job. It was funny, and I wrote about this in my upcoming book, but it was, so the CEO would basically be getting data or information from various departments, and a lot of it just seemed very rosy, very rosy. And so I was brought in to basically be his kind of sit outside his office and be his numbers guy. Um, and it was interesting because his business partner was notorious for, like, he wouldn't even let people bring him a chart. He's like, I want to see the table of the data. I can look at that, right? Because that's the amount of distrust he had with the data that they were getting. So, but it took somebody who, and I think a lot of people who are working numbers in these departments, they felt, I think, very disillusioned. It's like, why does the CEO not trust us? Right. And so, but it took working with him to understand sort of what was going on there. And part of it, I think, was personality, and self-inflicted stuff, but also there was also a degree of, the numbers were not, they were a bit too optimistic in some ways. And so it took a bit of a reality check to get it in order. But it was a very interesting experience coming out of school and working that, being in high profile meetings with CEOs of big companies that you've heard of as a kid. But just seeing also just how data, um, it definitely has utility. It can be weaponized for sure with people with agendas. And I saw that
Yep.
firsthand. I made a lot of enemies at this company, and friends, of course. I mean, they put me over operations at one point, and so nothing was ordered without my permission because they kept fucking up everywhere. Um, you know, but yeah, it's a very interesting thing. But it definitely highlighted to me that data is one of these things where it is territorial. But you can make it work, but it does take a degree of, I think, just going for it and not making excuses. In my case, I was new and didn't know anything, so I had no habits to break. I didn't have a victim mentality, but there were people that did, right? And I think that's where they ended up failing a lot, is because it was like, well, stupid Joe over there and his numbers versus mine and all this other stuff. Then it became a bit of a turf war, but ultimately I report to the CEO, and he's the one who, because I'm the guy he listens to. It is what it is.
Well, you just touched on something, and I'm kind of paraphrasing. I'm not even paraphrasing you. But you touched on something which I talk a lot about in my book. I think there's a lot of, and I'm not saying this is you. I'm saying this is probably the situation. For a lot of people who get into that situation, is like, this place is too far gone. Forget about it. They don't care about data. It's a lost cause. One of the things that I invite data leaders to consider when they read my book is that we exist in a partnership, but this is not an equal partnership. Meaning it is not data first. It's business first. If there's no business, there is no data. If there's no procure to pay, quote to cash, there's no data and there's no job for us. So yes, this is a partnership between IT and the business, but it is not an equal partnership. We exist to serve. And I think we need more of that mentality in the data and analytics function. We are here to serve you. And I think many of us have put data on a pedestal. Too many of us have put data on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Have embraced this kind of data first, and it's all about the data. No, it's not. So if your CEO is like, I don't trust the data, I don't trust anything out of the data and analytics function, it's not okay, you suck and I can't work for you. It's, how do we improve this? How do we make this better? How do we build the trust? Right? How can I serve? I think we need more of that. I call it a service mentality, and this isn't a
Yeah.
service desk mentality. I'm not talking like take a ticket. That's not what I'm
Yep.
talking about. I'm talking about we exist to serve.
I've always said that data is most successful, at least from what I've seen, when we don't have to call it data, right? Like the data team or whatever, right? It just does what it does. Like when I, at that job, there was, I mean, it's not like we had a data team. I guess I was the data team, but it's one of those things where it's not like I went there and said we have to, get more value from the data. No, it's like go help sales out and get shit done there, and then go help marketing and get them on track, right? Go oversee operations and get that on track. That was my mandate. Data was a way to do it. I was really good with data. That's just a knack I have. It's not like, and there's no point where I was like, ceremoniously saying, well, data is what we need to do. It's like, well, what do you need to get done? Let's do that. I don't really give a shit what we do.
It's interesting. That's actually the last chapter of my book, which
Mm-hmm.
is I talk about companies that have figured it out. I talk about companies that are like doing this well. And, you could call them digital natives if you want. You could call them the better part of the Mag 7, I would argue, is doing this well. But I kind of work backwards from, how do we get to where we want to be? What are the companies doing things really, really well? And how do we reverse engineer that? To me, it starts with mindset, right? It starts with mindset, but there's a whole bunch of things. And I spend half of my book talking about this. There's a whole bunch of things that we could be doing differently, starting with changing the way we think about our customers and our role in our data, right? Owning our success, not blaming. It starts with that mindset. It starts with a learning centric growth mindset. It starts from there. And then I spend multiple chapters getting into some of the kind of the blocking and tackling that we could do, right? As data leaders to get us deeply ingrained. Because what you described, Joe, was absolutely correct. The companies that are doing data and especially governance and even governance, they're doing it well. It's woven into what they do,
Exactly.
right? It's like it's literally woven into their operations. There is no separate function for data, or there is
Yeah.
no separate function for governance. But how do we reverse engineer that from where we are? I would argue we need to start thinking more about our customers. I got a whole chapter in my book about customer centricity, using the word customer. I've been on conference stages multiple times this year where I ask a question: how many of you actually call your customers customers? And there'd be like 3 or 4 hands out of hundreds of people, like 3 or 4,
Interesting.
right? We don't even use the word customer, right? That's one. Another word is products. And I'm bullish on data products. I'm not this isn't about data products and like left
Right.
shift, right shift, all of that. What I'm really bullish on is product management.
Yep.
Product management. And if you are a product manager that's good at what you do, you'll have some products that are finished products like dashboards or APIs or things that are kind of shrink wrap, ready to go. You'll have some products that are shift left, right? That are as close to source as possible, that are maybe individual fields of data, right? Or the individual, like a gold master record or something reasonably close to source. You'll have all of it because you'll be focused on customer needs. And if your customer is an agent or an LLM, chances are pretty good your product is going to look a little shift lefty. And if you are trying to keep your CEO happy, your product's going to be probably more shift right. But it's customer focus, customers first, right? Then build the products to meet the customer's need. And if you're product centric, you're probably also pretty good at doing things like ROI analysis and maybe even sunsetting problems, getting products, getting rid of the 300 dashboards that nobody's using,
Right.
right? Instead of complaining about the fact that they exist and using that as proof that nobody cares about data, just get rid of the products that nobody uses, right? So I spent half of my book talking about, okay, how do we get out of this mess and into a world where we are customer centric, we're product centric, where we get to the point where data becomes interwoven to the fabric of how our business operates.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that are doing it. There's not many, but there's some.
I think that number's growing though, and in part, what is interesting too is the rise of vibe coded apps, for example, right? And AI and the consumerization of AI. I'm seeing actually the most success right now and the most output from non-technical people, right? Who could in businesses, making new workflows, new automations, prototyping an app in Lovable or Replit or something like that, and then testing things out. Like there's a willingness of experimentation, and it's interesting because it's divide. I think is what I'm seeing now is sometimes especially if you're kind of an internal facing IT oriented company with a data team or not, whatever, but like people are just sort of leapfrogging all that stuff right now. They're like, I'm just going to make products And if you want to come along for the ride, give me the best tools, great. If not, I'm going to go use the chat GPT I have on my phone and get my job done because the thing you gave me sucks. And I'm seeing this overwhelmingly right now where there's people are, there's just the consumerization of AI is opening up just the floodgates on all these new capabilities. People are shifting left, right. It was interesting in London, at Big Data London, there was a woman we were doing this VIP session, and I just turned it into a group discussion. Actually, said I didn't want to give the same talk I gave the day before, and it was interesting. People were talking about how people in their company were just using Microsoft Copilot for their analysis tool and completely bypassing any data team stuff per se. Were the outputs great? Probably not, actually, because the data, it's not governed properly, and it's Lord knows what Copilot's looking at. But that's where people are right now. They're not waiting anymore for a data team. There's like, screw it, we're going to use Copilot even if the data isn't there. I'll use it anyway. Whatever. It's interesting.
And you just touched on something that, like, I can't believe we're not talking about more, and I don't understand why we're not talking about it more. But to me, it's fairly fundamental, and that is, for literally years now, and you go into any of those vendor halls and talk to any of the vendors, right, that are all flying an AI flag. All of them will tell you we're not AI ready. There are these magic things you need to do, or you need to buy our software to get yourself to be AI ready. You need the consulting agreement, you need the software. Here's all the things you need in order to be AI ready, and your data is just not AI ready. You're not ready. And so many CDOs have bought that narrative over the last 3 years, and so many continue to buy it to this day. Meanwhile, ChatGPT was built on the internet. Exactly. Not exactly a bastion of good data quality. Right? Not exactly the best, greatest, most amazing data. Somehow, it hallucinates a little bit. It's imperfect, but somehow they built a transformational technology on this cesspool of data quality known as the internet. And what you just said, Joe, is that companies are tired of waiting. They're tired of hearing we're not ready. They're tired of hearing we don't have the governance framework in place. They're tired of hearing that they're data illiterate, and they're saying, forget it. I'm just going to go build it on my own, right? And they are, and you can. And what they're learning is that often the data is good enough. The data is good enough, and you don't have to do all these preceding actions. There's not 15,000 dependencies, governance frameworks, or consulting SOWs that you need to embark in. You can actually do things of value right now. That's exactly basically what you're saying, and I'm seeing it too, because companies are getting frustrated.
Yeah, and there's magic superpowers you have right now. ChatGPT is awesome. Do you have to go? I actually heard an alert go off.
What's that? No, we're good.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Got a few more minutes. No, I mean, it's absolutely right. And, I recently did this roundtable with, I think it was 30, chief data officers in Austria. Europe is a different game. And I had to be that guy. And I said, look, there's 1,000-foot tsunami coming at you, or, 1,000 meters, whatever you want to call it, coming at you. And you're still talking about the battles of yesterday, right? Setting up data warehouses, all this stuff. AI is improving on a daily basis. You can ship things because one of the people's like, well, but we need to have a requirements gathering that lasts 6 months. We need to whiteboard things out. And it's like, in the time that you just said that, I could have been, in the time we were talking about this topic, I could have just built a prototype and just showed it to you, right? And had AI do it. That's kind of where we are now, where it's a show, don't tell mentality as well. And I think this is a big macro force that's only going to become more apparent. And you're absolutely right with the data team. We need to be AI ready. Our data needs to be AI ready. It's like, I think that's an absolute lie, actually. Your data needs to be in good shape for a lot of stuff. Agents, for example, they may or may not need data at all, right? This is just how it is now. So, and I think it's one of those things where it's almost, it almost becomes a cop-out or an excuse in some ways. Like, well, we need to, get everything in order. I'm like, I don't think you have time. I don't think you have the luxury of time on this one.
Nope. And
you need to move.
What you're touching on is something that I've heard you highlight on LinkedIn, and I certainly have highlighted this on LinkedIn. What is AI ready is not BI ready.
Correct.
And conflating the two is highly problematic because these are very, very different worlds. The worlds of BI is highly deterministic. It's rules driven. It's policy driven. We can assess the quality in a vacuum outside of how the data is even being used. We can assess the quality devoid largely of context, all of that stuff. AI, completely different world. The requirements for AI are completely different. Here's an example. What is BI ready is data that conforms to some idea of a standard. Those standards are defined through our governance policies, right? That's what BI ready is. AI ready is data that is closest to the source to support a given use case. Completely opposite. Closest to source, closest to a standard. But what I see is CDOs saying, oh, well, our data is not AI ready because there's still data quality issues, because we still have pipeline failures, because of all of these BI centric ways of looking at the world. And I'm out there and I'm like, guys, stop assessing anything through the lens of your BI readiness and saying that, well, that means that we're not AI ready, because it's simply not true. But to the bigger point about Europe, I'm worried. I was in Copenhagen. I had dinner with 17 CDOs there. I've been in London multiple times, having similar conversations. And the general kind of rule of thumb for me over the last few years is that Europe was, and I don't mean this in a kind of derogatory, judgmental way, but Europe was 2 to 3 years behind some of the stuff that we were doing in the US. Now I see that accelerating. And there's a lot of reasons why. You don't need to get political, but the regulatory frameworks over there. I had a conversation with the CDO for a company that made windows. Okay, like window manufacturing, right? And he was telling me about this one regulation, the EU deforestation regulation, where if you are using wood or wood derived products, pulp, paper, whatever, if you're using wood, you need in your products, you need to be able to show that wood was forested was forested in a sustainable way, and you need full traceability and lineage. You could use like the smallest little toothpick of wood in your product, but that toothpick you need to be able to attest that it came from and it was sustainably sourced, which means like on every little piece and every little smallest piece of wood or wood-based product that goes into your product, you need like in essence traceability, like a QR code to be able to trace it back to the field from which it was sourced in Europe. And the CDO was looking at me basically saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But there's a ton, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for sustainability. I'm all for a green planet. I'm all for, but at the same time, it's like the overhead and the cost that will be required to fulfill this one regulatory constraint when it comes to building windows or building anything out of wood was like this massive lift. So when it comes to Europe, man, I'm concerned. I get it.
Oh, yeah.
I get it from a green and sustainability perspective. At the same time, like, wow.
It's a lot of regulation. I remember I was speaking in France once, and somebody came up to me afterward and said, you got to understand the U.S. innovates and the EU regulates. I was like, yeah, that seems like a good summary of things. And there's also, a very risk averse culture that I've seen where, I mentioned AI and like, well, but there's a lot of risk. And I thought, well, fine, you can continue doing what you're doing. Meanwhile, we're going to eat your lunch, right? Except when you have regulatory capture and we can't get into your countries. But it's like, it was just shocking, like how resistant people were to the very idea of trying something new, right? Like I remember I was talking to this engineer even, in Austria, and he said, "Well, yeah, but I tried ChatGPT like 2 years ago and it didn't work, right, for coding." I was like, "Yeah, that was a 2-year-old model. It's changed a lot. They improve every week. You should try it again." And I think he did, and from what I understand, he's actually on board now. But it was this mentality where it's just feeling like everything is fixed and static, right? Like the models we use don't change at all. Yes, they change every day actually. So it is definitely an interesting mindset. Yeah, I'm worried about Europe too. I had to put a lot of the CDOs at task. It's like, you're gonna have your lunch eaten. Thank God you have labor protections here, because like
Yeah.
you wouldn't last a day in the U.S.
I do understand some of the concerns, but at the same time, so let's drill on the whole AI readiness thing. First of all, what the hell does that mean? Right? Can you actually tell me? And this is rhetorical, Joe. Like this is rhetorical.
Well, I know
But
that.
what does that even mean? But putting that aside, this idea that all of these preceding actions need to happen in order for you to do something of consequence is exactly why I wrote the book. Right? It's exactly why I wrote the book. Like, no, No, right? You don't need all those 15 things that your consultant or your analyst is telling you that you need to do. You can go do something right now, right? And that's kind of, well, not kind of, that is the core message. And this idea
Yeah.
that things are just static or they'll always be this way, or just throw up your hands, oh well, it is what it is. I have talked to a few CDOs. I hosted a panel in London in March talking to three CDOs, including the CDO of the Bank of England, the CDO of the London Stock Exchange Group, and the CDO of Volvo. And all of them were moving forward with Gen AI with some form of a POC, most of them internally facing, just trying to figure things out. And all of them acknowledged we're learning as we go. We don't have all the magic answers. We don't know. Probably be some problems around the way. There'll be some hiccups, some road bumps. We'll figure those out as we go. We'll learn as we go. We'll perfect as we go. And I was like, bingo. That's
Yeah.
exactly a growth mindset. And that's exactly what you're talking about. The opposite of that is have your lunch eaten.
That's the opposite. Well, Malcolm, it's been great talking to you. Congrats on the book again. I know it's not easy to do these things. You got to be somewhat of a madman, but if you cross that bridge, what's next for you? What are you excited about?
Gosh. Well, so I'm excited about the end of the year. I'm excited about taking like 2 weeks of not traveling, doing
Mm,
something where I can completely and totally turn my brain off. I don't know what that is. I live in Florida. Maybe I'll go fish for 2 weeks, or
that'd be sick.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to some time off at the end of the year and not doing anything. I'm looking forward to next year. I'm looking forward to continuing to spread this message of change and empowerment and of growth. I am going to write book number two. I am going to write a book about data products. It has to be written. My first 15 years in professional life was as a product owner manager. I became a chief product officer, right, for a software startup in Austin where I led a product team. I hired analysts, I hired product managers, I built great and amazing products. And I want to bring that insight to the data and analytics world. There's some people, some friends of ours that have made and written some amazing books about kind of the shift left product. Andre Goya wrote an amazing book about this, which is the kind of like, I would call it the shift left mentality. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. We need that, particularly if our customers are agents. But I want to shift hardcore right. I want to go all in customers, all in price tags, like literally price tags on everything. If you can imagine putting a price tag on everything you did, it's a thought exercise. I'm not being
Yeah,
literal here, but like that's where I want to go. So I'm going to write another
that's super
book
cool.
next year, and it'll be about data product management. And
Oh,
so I'm excited for that.
very cool. Congrats. I think it's a book that needs to happen. So, for people who want to find out more about you, how can they find you?
Oh man, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm still active on LinkedIn every day. So if you're searching for Malcolm Hawker, there's only three of us. It's not a huge disambiguation problem. There's literally three Malcolm Hawkers on the planet. One is a clergy. That's not me. And I think there's one other. But I'm reasonably easy to find on LinkedIn. If you just search, Hawker, Hawker, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn or come to a data event. And chances are pretty good I'll be speaking at some data event near you sometime soon.
Sick. Malcolm, good to catch up with you, and I'll see you probably in the broader world at some point. So,
I look forward to it.
yeah, take care, man. See ya.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Bye. Yeah.